and the small ones choked and had to be patted on the back. However, it was over at last, and they all sat down again in a ring and begged the mouse to tell them something more.
"You promised to tell me your history, you know,"
said Alice.
"And why is it you hate C and D?"
she added in a whisper, half afraid that it would be offended again.
"Mine is long and sad tale,"
said the mouse, turning to Alice and sighing.
"It is a long tale, certainly,"
said Alice, looking down with wonder at the mouse's tail.
"But why do you call it sad?"
And she kept on puzzling about it while the mouse was speaking, so that her idea of the tale was something like this. Furry said to a mouse that he met in the house, "Let us both go to law. I will prosecute you. Come, I'll take no denial. We must have a trial, for, really, this morning I've nothing to do." Said the mouse to the cur, "Such a trial, dear sir, with no jury or judge, would be wasting our breath." "Judge, I'll be jury," said cunning old Fury. "I'll try the whole cause and condemn you to death."
"You are not attending,"
said the mouse to Alice severely.
"What are you thinking of?"
"I beg your pardon," said Alice very humbly.
"You had to go to the 5th bend, I think." "I had not,"
cried the mouse sharply and very angrily.
"I'm not,"
said Alice, always ready to make herself useful and looking anxiously about her.
"Oh, do let me help you undo it." "I shall do nothing of the sort,"
said the mouse, getting up and walking away.
"You insult me by talking such nonsense." "I didn't mean it,"
pleaded poor Alice.
"But you're so easily offended, you know."
The mouse only growled in reply.
"Please come back and finish your story,"
Alice called after it, and all others joined in a chorus. "Yes, please do!" But the mouse only shook its head impatiently and walked a little quicker. "What a pity, it wouldn't stay," sighed the Lory as soon as it was quite out of sight, and an old crab took the opportunity of saying to her daughter, my dear, let this be a lesson to you never to lose your temper." "Hold your tongue, ma," said the little crab snappishly. "You're enough to try patience of an oyster."
"I wish I had our Dinah here. I know I do,"
said Alice aloud, addressing nobody in particular.
"She'd soon fetch it back."
"And who's Dinah, if I may venture to ask the question?" said the Lory. Alice replied eagerly, for she was ready to talk about her pet.
"Dinah's our cat, and she's such a capital for one catching mice you can't think. And oh, I wish you could see her after the birds. Why, she'll eat a little bird as soon as look at it."
The speech caused a remarkable sensation among the party. Some of the birds hurried off at once, and one magpie began wrapping itself up very carefully, remarking, "I really must be getting home. The late night air doesn't suit my throat." And the canary called out in trembling voice to its children, Come, my dears, it's high time you were all in bed." On various pretexts, they all moved off, and Alice was soon left alone.
"I wish I hadn't mentioned Dinah,"
she said to herself in a melancholy tone.
"Nobody seems to like her down here, and I'm sure she's the best cat in the world. Oh, my dear Dinah, I wonder if I shall ever see you more."
And here poor Alice began to cry again, for she felt very lonely and low-spirited. In a little while, however, she again heard a little pattering of footsteps in the distance, and she looked up eagerly, half hoping that the mouse had changed his mind and was coming back to finish his story. Chapter 4. The Rabbit Sends a Little Bill. It was the White Rabbit, trotting slowly back again, and looking anxiously about it as it went, as if it had lost something, and she heard muttering to itself, the Duchess, oh my dear paws, oh my fur, and I my whiskers, she'll get me executed as sure as ferrets are ferrets. Where can I have dropped them, I wonder?" Alice guessed a moment that he was looking for the fan and the pair of white kid gloves that she had very good-naturedly began hunting about for them, but they were nowhere to be seen. Everything seemed to have changed since her swim in the pool, and the great hall with the glass table and the little door had vanished completely. Very soon the rabbit noticed Alice as she went hunting about and called out to her in an angry tone, "Why, Marianne, what are you doing here? Run home this moment and fetch me a pair of gloves and a fan, quick now!" And Alice was so much frightened that she ran off once in a direction that pointed to without trying to explain the mistake it had made.
"He took me for a housemaid,"
she said to herself as she ran.
"How surprised he'll be when he finds out who I am. But I better take him his fan and gloves, that is, if I can find them."
As she said this, she came upon a neat little house on the door of which was bright brass plate with the name W. Rabbit engraved upon it. She went in without knocking and hurried upstairs in great fear lest she should meet the real Marianne and be turned out of the house before she had found the fan and gloves.
How weird it seems,
Alice said to herself,
to be going messages for a rabbit. I suppose Dinah will be sending me messages next.
and she began fancying the sort of thing that would have happened. Miss Alice, come here directly and get ready for your walk. Coming in a minute, nurse, but I've got to see that the mouse doesn't get out. Only I don't think, Alice went on, that they'd let Dinah stop in the house if it began ordering people and like that. By this time she had found her way in the tiny little room with a table in the window, and on it, as she had hoped, a fan and 2 or 3 pairs of tiny white kid gloves. She took up the fan and pair of gloves and was just going to leave the room, when her eye fell upon a little bottle that stood near a drinking glass. There was no label on it this time with the words "Drink me," but nevertheless she undercorked it and put her lips.
I know something interesting is sure to happen,
She said to herself.
whenever I eat or drink anything, so I'll just see what this bottle does, and I hope it'll make me grow large again, for I really am quite tired of being such a tiny little thing.
It did so, indeed, and much sooner than she had expected. Before she had drunk all half the bottle and found her head pressing against the ceiling and had to stoop to save her neck from being broken. She hastily put down the bottle, saying to herself,
That's quite enough. I hope I shan't grow any more. As it is, I can't get out of the door. I do wish I hadn't drunk quite so much.
Alas, it was too late to wish that. She went growing, and very soon she had to kneel down on the floor, and in another minute there was not even room for this, and she tried the effect of lying down with one elbow against the door and the other arm curled around her head. Still she went on growing, and as a last resource she put one arm out of the window and one foot up the chimney, and said to herself,
Now I can do no more. Whatever happens, what will become of me?
Lucky for Alice, the little magic bottle had now had its full effect, and she grew no larger. Still, it was very uncomfortable, and as there seemed to be no sort of chance of her ever getting out of the room again, no wonder she felt unhappy.
It was much pleasanter at home,
Thought poor Alice.
when no one was always growing larger and smaller, and being ordered about by mice and rabbits. I almost wish I hadn't gone down in that little rabbit hole. And yet, it's rather curious, you know, this sort of life. I do wonder what can have happened to me. When I used to read fairy tales, I fancy that kind of thing never happened, and now here I am, in the middle of one. There ought to be a book written about me, and when I grow up, I'll write one, but I'm grown up now.
She added in a sorrowful tone.
At least there's no room to grow up anymore here, but then
Thought Alice.
I shall never get any older than I am now. That I'll be the comfort one way never to be an old woman, but then always have lessons to learn. Oh, I shouldn't like that. Oh, you foolish Alice.
She answered herself.
How can you learn lessons in here? Why, there's hardly any room for you, and no room at all for any lesson books.
And so she went on talking, first on one side, then on the other, and making quite a conversation of it all together. But after a few minutes, she heard a voice outside and stopped to listen. Marianne, Marianne, said the voice, fetch me my gloves this moment. And then came a little pattering of feet on the stairs. Alice knew it was the rabbit coming to look for her, and she trembled till she shook the house, quite forgetting she was now about 1,000 times as large as the rabbit, and had no reason to be afraid of it. Presently the rabbit came up to the door, tried to open it, but as soon as the door opened inwards, Alice's elbow was pressed hard against it and attempted to prove a failure. Alice heard it say to itself, Then I'll go around and get in that window.
That you won't,
thought Alice, and after waiting till she fancied she heard the rabbit just under the window, she suddenly spread out her hand and made a snatch in the air. She did not get a hold of anything, but she heard a little shriek and a fall and a crash of broken glass, from which she concluded that it was just possible it had fallen into a cucumber frame or something of the sort. Next came an angry voice of the rabbit's, Pat, Pat, where are you? And then a voice she had never heard before. Sure then, I'm here, digging for apples, your honor. Digging for apples indeed, said the rabbit angrily. Here, come and help me out of this sound of more broken glass. Now tell me, Pat, what's in the window? Sure, it's an arm, your honor. He pronounced it an arm. An arm, you goose? Who ever saw one that size? Why, it fills the whole window. Sure it does, your honor, but it's of arm for all that. Well, I've got no business here. At any rate, go and take it away. There was a long silence after this, and Alice could only hear whispers.